Hey everyone, this is Tyson from Dinosaur Dog Studio, and today we're going to talk about how to master your first song. So this is a very simple mastering approach to be able to master any song. So let's dive right in. Okay, so in front of me we have a song. It's just a stereo file. The other tracks that you see in here are just references that we're going to be using to master this song. So let's take a listen to the song itself, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we can tell it's a pretty punk rock type vibe. Let's listen to our references that I chose for this song. They're all kind of in this very similar genre. I do recommend sticking within the same genre just so that you stick within those genre norms. A hip-hop record will be mastered much differently than a rock record, for example. So let's listen to our first reference. So the first thing I noticed personally is that our song that we're trying to master here is much darker than the other ones. So we're definitely going to want some more brightness. But in order to ensure that we don't add too much brightness, we can do a very simple strategy in using a match EQ. So in Logic, we have one just by default, so we can add that there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our current song and we're going to get a baseline of where it is at sonically in the frequency spectrum. So okay, now let's so my strategy here is I'm actually going to use all the references at the same time. This may seem kind of odd because it's going to sound really bad, but it's going to give me a good baseline of what the frequency spectrum looks like all over. This is exactly what AI recording or what AI mastering does as well, is it listens to all the popular records of the last 10 years or whatever, and then uses the algorithm to say, these are the moves that we have to make to your song in order to reach that. What I like doing is I like picking the references I'm going to use because I know what I want my song to sound like. And so I'm going to pick references that are kind of in the same ballpark of where it's at. I'm not going to pick one reference because then it's the individual intricacies of how that song was mixed might impact the master and the EQ a little bit more. So I like to pick at least 2 or 3 songs just so I get a good baseline of what that genre should look like as a whole on songs that I actually enjoy. We're just going to play all of them at the same time and we'll get the baseline here. Okay, so obviously that sounds really terrible, but now we have a good baseline of what our EQ curve is missing. So as we can see, we're missing a little top end. It's a little heavy in the bottom end, so we need to bring that down. What I like to do is just smooth this out a little bit. I'm not going to actually use this Match EQ plugin. I'm actually going to add my own linear phase EQ. You can really use any EQ for this. It's not that important. I'm going to go ahead and boost it on the top end. I'm just going to recreate the curve that I see. So let's say around 5.5. I'm going to give it a pretty healthy boost around 2 decibels. And we're going to cut around 2000. And we got a little tiny cut right above 200, like 220 probably, 240. And then we got a healthier cut right around 100. I'm not going to go too far because our references are a little heavier on the bottom end, so I don't want to cut out too much here, because this is where our bottom end really lives in this song. But let's try that. Okay, so I'm going to disable my Match EQ plugin. I'm just going to remove it entirely. so that I'm left with just my specific track. Okay, so you can tell it's a lot brighter. There's a lot more life into it after that EQ move. So let's just compare it really quick against our references again. So I still feel like it's missing a little bit of top end. So I'm going to go ahead and actually add an EQ before this one. Normally this isn't necessary, but just for the sake of doing this right, we're going to add pretty healthy boost here. Around, yeah, let's try 1 decibel. And so I moved the gain down just a little bit just to make sure I'm not just hearing it be louder, but I'm actually getting a good overall level of what the EQ is doing. Yeah, so I do like that on there. So let's leave that and let's move on to compression. So now our EQ is completely done. Moving on to compression. So I'm gonna use all the stock plugins here and we're gonna use a compressor. I'm gonna use a vintage VCA. For our compression, I normally am not very prescriptive when it comes to what settings and what specific settings you use for compression. However, for our master, I will be very prescriptive. We want a 4:1 ratio and we want a slow attack. Let's start around 100 or so, and then a fast release. So let's say between 50 and probably 20 or so. So let's just start with 30 and see how that sounds. Our makeup gain is going to be nothing for now and no knee. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly bring my threshold down until I start feeling the compression a little bit and also seeing that knob little twitch a little bit. What I don't want to do is I don't want to get a ton of compression out of this. I don't want to get 2 or 3 decibels of gain reduction because that's just way too much for a master generally. And for this song, it's already heavily compressed and we can feel that in the mix. So we don't need to add anything there for the master. So let's start and get our compression dialed in. Yeah, so I'm liking that. Just for the sake of brevity, I'm not gonna spend too long doing this. And let's move on. Okay, so that's compression. That's how easy it is. And then the last thing we're going to do is going to add a limiter. And so for the Logic stock compressors, or limiters. I don't really like their limiter. I actually prefer to use a limiter inside of the compressor. So in order to do that, the biggest things I'm going to be focusing on is obviously the limiter right here, the threshold, the makeup gain, which is going to be pushing into my limiter, and then the release, which is going to be very important. So one other thing I need before I actually start limiting is I need a meter. I'm going to get a level meter. All I'm looking for is the average volume, so the RMS, if you have one of these. Most masters are mastered around -12 to -10 decibels. If it's like a metal song, you'll sometimes push it a bit louder, but a good benchmark is between -12 and -10 decibels. Most streaming services are going to turn it down anyway, but just to get that level of loudness and that feeling of loudness that you likely want out of your master, that is a good benchmark to shoot for. So let's start limiting. So you can see we're right around -18. And so we want to get up to -12. So that means we need at least 6 decibels of gain. One thing I'm going to do on my limiter is I'm actually going to move that output, so the threshold here on the limiter, to -3 decibels or -0.3 decibels, just to give ourselves a little bit of headroom as we're mastering this song. Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. We're also, peaking a little bit above -10, which is a good spot for our master. So there we have it. All we have to do now is just bounce that song, and we are done with the mastering process. So all right, so I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial on how to master. If you're interested in any of my mixing or mastering services, you can learn more at dinosaurdogstudio.com. And if you're just looking for more free content, free help with your mixing, then go to musicartistgroup.com, and that will actually link you to the free Facebook group that I have in order to help you improve your mixes, give you personal feedback if you post on there, and anything else that you may need from an education standpoint, just post your questions there. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.